All right, no laughing at my pen today in this video. What we're going to do today is we're going to be solving equations by taking the square roots or finding the square roots. So the key concept is this. That's exactly it. We have x squared equals d, where d is just some random number. Okay, so d is just some random number. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be anything. Let me turn my ink on so it actually works. Okay, and so here's the key, though, what we need to pay attention to. If we get an equation down to x squared equals something, okay, if d is greater than 0, in other words, if d is positive, okay, if d is positive, then we have two solutions. We have the positive and the negative square root of d, whatever d is, positive and negative square root. If d equals 0, then x squared has just one solution, 0. Okay, and if d is negative or d is less than 0, which means it's negative, then x squared equals d has no solution. Why would that be? I'm going to let you guys kind of take guesses of why that would be, why we would have no solutions if we get a negative number on this side for d. And we can talk about that on Thursday. So let's go ahead and do a first example. You'll probably figure it out when we go through this. So solve the equation 2x squared equals 8. So this is something we have right here. We don't have any b term or c term. These are very simple quadratic equations. Okay, so the first thing we would do would be divide each side by 2. And why we do that is because we need the x squared by itself. So I'm going to try to do this pen thing as best I can. So we get x squared equal to 4. Okay, because if I divide both sides by 2, and that means I have to divide 8 by 2, so that leaves me with x squared equal to 4. So now I have it in the form of x squared equals d, where my d is 4. So now I'm going to take the square roots of both sides, and I'm going to take the square root of x squared and the square root of 4. Well, the square root of x squared is just x, and the square root of 4 is positive 2 and negative 2. So my solutions are this, and you can write it this way if you want to. You can write plus or minus 2. Okay, there's how we do it. Okay, that's exactly how simple this is. So moving on, I think my ink is going to, yeah, I didn't think it was going to stay. So let's do the next example. Solve this equation. What will we have to do first for this equation? We have to get m squared by itself, so we need to add 18 to both sides. Okay, so we're going to add 18 to both sides. So add 18, and just a hint, we're not getting the equation equal to 0. That's not what we're doing. It just happens to be equal to 0. There we go. No laughing. So m squared equals 0. It just happens to equal 0. Again, take the square roots of each side, and I take the square root of m squared and the square root of 0, and I get m equals, well, the square root of 0 is just 0. It's my only solution. So that's the only answer I have on this one. All right, now let's look at this last example. Oh my goodness, I don't know why it keeps doing that. So sorry. So solve the equation b squared plus 12 equals 5. So we're going to subtract 12 from each side. Again, we're not getting the equation equal to 0. We are getting the b squared by itself. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. Okay, and I'm going to end up, in this case, I'm going to end up with b squared equals 5 minus 12, which is negative 7. Okay, and then when I try to take the square roots of this, okay, I can take the square root of b squared and I can get b, but I cannot take the square root of a negative number. Negative numbers do not have real square roots. If you put this into the calculator, you'll get syntax error. It'll show you that syntax error. So b equals, and we're just going to say no solutions. And just keep in mind what that means. That doesn't mean you can't graph it. It doesn't mean it's not a parabola. Sorry about my writing. All that means is this equation will not cross the x-axis. Okay? It will not cross the x-axis. It's going to be a parabola whose vertex sits above the x-axis and goes up. So it will not cross the x-axis. So here's an example of what it might look like. May not be on the negative side, I don't know. But it would look kind of like that. It would sit above the x-axis and go up. It's never going to touch. So that's what a no solution means. Just keep that in mind. Okay? All right, going ahead and moving on to example 2. We're going to take the square roots of a fraction. It's the same idea, but instead of adding or subtracting to get z squared by itself, well, we divided on the first one. So we're going to divide again just to show you. So we're going to divide each side by 4. Okay? And so I end up with z squared equals 9 over 4. Now, I'm not going to simplify that. You guys might want to simplify that into a decimal, which you can. You could. It'd be 2.25, which anyway, I'm not even going to go into how I know what that is. But you could take the square roots of each side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of each side. We're going to take the square root of z squared, and we're going to take the square root of the entire fraction. And remember that the square root of the entire fraction is the same thing as the square root of 9 over the square root of 4. Okay, so that's what that equals. And the square root of 9 is 3. And the square root of 4 is 2. Okay? And that's the positive, but there's also a negative, so just keep in mind it's plus or minus 3 over 2. So positive, negative, 3/2, or positive, negative 1.5. I'll even let you do decimals for this. Okay? All right. That is good examples of when the your D, so to speak, turns out to be a nice perfect square. So in cases where D is not a perfect square, or a fraction whose numerator or denominator are not perfect squares, you need to approximate the square root. You can use your calculator. Yay. So here's an example of that. So to get x squared by itself, notice the only thing I have is x squared. I don't have an x. I just have an x squared and a constant. So instead of trying to graph, we're just going to keep it easy. We're going to solve for x squared, get it by itself. So the first thing I do is add 11 to each side. So when I add 11 to each side, that leaves me with 3x squared equals 18. Because remember, I'm adding 11 over here. So 7 plus 11 is 18. Then I'm going to divide each side by 3. Okay. And that's going to leave me with x squared equals 6. So taking the square root of x squared and the square root of 6, I'm left with x equals, and you guys can put that into your calculator. And I would say always round to the nearest hundredth. So it comes out 2.449. So go ahead and round to 2.45. Now I'm going to go ahead and change these equal signs. And why am I going to change these equal signs? I don't want to say it equals because it doesn't equal exactly. It's not 2.45 times 2.45. That's not going to get me exactly back to 6. So you can even test that in your calculator. If you do 2.45 times 2.45, I'm doing it right now just to see, put that in, you get 6.0025. So you're just a little bit above 6. So again, we're going to use approximately. So anytime we don't have a perfect square, I want you to remember we're going to be approximating. Sorry about that terrible circle. So you need to use the little squiggly lines. So your approximate solutions are, so x approximately equals, let's try that again. Approximately equals plus or minus 2.45. Do not forget the positive and negative root. Okay? Okay, I'm going to let you go ahead and do the guided practice. You can do them one at a time. You can do them all, however you would like to do it. And then I'm going to go through each problem. So go ahead and pause the video. You can do one at a time. And then you can pause the video after I've done problem A. You can pause the video after I've done problem B. You can pause the video or whatever. Or you can do them all and then watch the video. So All right, so pause and try. Bring your questions to class. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused the video and you are now wanting to check your answers. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to turn our ink on. That'd be the first thing we're going to do. Is we're going to add 3 to both sides. And I will skip some of these steps in a little bit. So we're going to have 3x squared equal to 3. Divide both sides by 3, and we get x squared equals 1. Take the square root of both sides, and we get x equals plus or minus 1. There's my solution to that one. You can pause the video and try problem B, or you can just keep watching. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 13 from both sides. Okay, and we're going to get 2w squared equals negative 2. Divide both sides by 2, we get w squared equals negative 1, and we're going to say no solution. And just remember, all that means is it does not cross the x-axis. Does not cross the x-axis. It is a parabola that would be above, that would sit above the x-axis. Okay, here is our problem C, so pause if you haven't done it. Okay, and let's go ahead, subtract 11 from both sides, and we get 25b squared equals 15 minus 11, which is 4. Divide both sides by 25, and we get b squared equals 4 over 25. Okay, and then we take the square root of b squared and the square root of 4 over 25, and that leaves me b. And then the square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of 25 is 5. So my solutions would be plus or minus. Let me make that a little bit better. Okay, so b equals positive and negative 2 over 5, or 2/5. Okay, so there's the first 3. Pause the video if you need to try problem D, or go ahead and watch D. Okay, for problem D, we're going to start by subtracting 6 from both sides. Okay, and we're going to get x squared equals 7. And then we're going to take the square root of 7. And I'm doing that right now. And we get 2.645, which, equals plus, that's an x, in case you can't read it, plus or minus 2.645, which makes me round this to 2.65. So, oh, what did I do wrong here? I need to change my equal signs to approximately. Okay, approximately plus or minus 2.65. Okay, so over here, oh, they're switching it up on us. The z squared's on this side, so I'm going to subtract 15 from both sides. Okay, and a positive 15, negative 15, add to 0. Over here, I get negative 36. And then over here, I'm left with negative 2z squared. Divide both sides by negative 2. Just to keep in mind, you guys, when I'm dividing by negative 2, this negative 36 divided by negative 2 becomes a positive 18. So this one does have a solution. So 18 equals z squared. When I take the square root, I'm going to go ahead and do that on my calculator. Second square root 18. I get 2.242. So plus or minus 2.2. I say 2 and write 4. 2.24 is approximately equal to z. So there's my x-intercepts. So there's the lesson. Bring your questions. Try to keep it short and sweet. Sorry, it was almost 15 minutes. Your assignment. Check on Canvas for your assignment.